find out more about France's public service, I'm joined by Laura Marlowe, the correspondent for the Irish Times here. You've been living in Paris for quite some time, so you've seen this debate about les fonctionnaires flare up time and time again. Do you think the fonctionnaire bashing that we see is fair?
Yes and no. I've dealt with some civil servants who were wonderful, who were very devoted, very hardworking, very efficient. But I've also met some who were sadistic, wicked, useless. So like any profession, it goes both ways. They have, for a very, very long time, been the butt of jokes by people. One was that when France moved to the 35-hour working week in the beginning of the 2000s, people were joking that civil servants would have to increase their hours to reach 35 hours. But at the same time, opinion polls show that most French people actually like their civil service and they appreciate the civil service and think it is good.
Would you say that France's civil service is effective?
Parts of it are very effective. A lot of it is not. Part of the problem is it is just expanded and expanded and expanded. And during the 3 decades of prosperity after the Second World War, the government had the money and they hired and hired and hired and hired. I think probably one of the biggest problems is that these people have job security. They cannot be fired. And I think that if civil servants were at risk of being fired, like people in the private sector, I think that would be a very good measure. I think they would shape up a bit.
And would you say that France is a nanny state? It's been described that way sometimes.
Yes. When you have become accustomed to having free medical care, free education, in many cases subsidized housing, you get used to that, and it's like an addiction, and the government can't take it away, or there will be mass unrest. It does a lot for its citizens, and not only does it do a lot for them in France, it does a lot for them abroad. For example, if you go hiking in the Himalayas and get lost, the French government will come and save you,
wow.
Which, arguably is a good thing, but it costs money.
Now, to tighten the belt, the French president Emmanuel Macron has vowed to slash the civil servants. He wants to cut 120,000 fonctionnaires. But which ones do you cut?
That's the problem. Most presidents promise to slash the civil servant. And then when they get in office, they don't know what to cut. It's very, very tricky because all of the ministries say that they're cut to the bone. Certainly the police are very hard-pressed since the jihadist attacks in 2015 and 16.
So not necessarily the police or the teachers or
not the police. The teachers, they are not very motivated. And one argument is that you should hire more teachers, better teachers, and pay them better. There's a lot of question about whether doctors and nurses in all French hospitals should be civil servants. Should they really have civil servant status? That said, I'm not sure privatizing the health system is the answer either.
Do you think that the French, who are quite used to these wonderful public services, are they ready for change themselves?
They say they are. All of the opinion polls show that the French want reform. The problem is when it comes down to me and my interest. If you try to reform, it will always affect someone's personal interest, and then they turn against you. So in theory, it sounds great, but as long as it doesn't touch me.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. That's all we have time for, but thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.